back, everyone, to These Aren't the Nerds You're Looking For. Kevin Horde here.
Lorenzo over here.
What's going on, Lorenzo?
Not much. Just getting back from Disneyland, as we talked about a little bit off air. So we're recording on a Sunday. We're going to go check it out in the middle of the day. Also, just to get out of my apartment.
Fair
It's
enough.
a good place to go. Yeah, that's all it was.
I spent most of the day avoiding the things that I was actually supposed to do today, so...
What kind of things are you avoiding here?
I'm refinishing some furniture. So, yesterday, we moved our kitchen table out into the garage, and it has been sanded down, and I need to clean it.
Very nice.
I'm going to be restaining it, and then, I don't know, I have 7 chairs that go along with that.
Damn.
And a side table for my kitchen as well that needs to be done. Plus, I'll be eventually painting doors and doing some other shit. So,
Very nice.
yep, trying to cram all that shit in before the holidays.
Good plan. Probably before it gets super cold and stuff out there too, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it's, the cold's fine, but it's the, it's just the time of getting the stuff done,
Yeah, for sure.
Side question.
Yes.
Are there differences that you know of between the Revenge of the Sith DVD and the Revenge of the Sith Blu-ray?
For that one, I'm not aware. I believe any home release there should generally match up.
Okay.
I don't... The big differences I would know would be like episode 1 where they replaced the CGI Yoda.
Mm-hmm. And they added some stuff into the pod racing scene.
I'm not even sure of that, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't know if that's different between the DVD and the Blu-ray, because forever I just had the Phantom Menace on VHS.
Mm-hmm.
And there's definitely some extra shit in on the Blu-ray copy. Can't speak for the DVD copy because I don't know that I've seen it on DVD.
Yeah, I have the DVD of all 3, like from their original DVD releases, of which Phantom Menace didn't even come out until like 2001 or something like that. There was a delayed release on that one for some weird reason.
Yep.
Which was really annoying because for a DVD, even comparing against other DVDs, the video quality on that DVD was trash. It was so bad.
Really?
Yeah. It was really weird because they took the film copies, which is fine because this is early 2000s, so we hadn't quite moved to digital filmmaking yet. We wouldn't until Attack of the Clones. That's the first Hollywood movie to be shot entirely on digital.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the standard process would be scanning the film, digitizing the film, and then putting it on a DVD, right?
Okay.
So there were already digital copies that were mastered because like the first run of like digital projectors had started creeping up in the late 90s and early 2000s or something like that.
Right.
And they could have used that master, but for whatever reason they rescanned whatever film master they had, and then they started doing a lot of post-digitizing work on it. So there was this thing that would happen with a lot of DVDs because the resolution still was pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of post-digitizing work that could be applied to a lot of movies, and by no means was episode 1 the only movie to have gone through this. A lot of other movies will go through this process where they over-sharpen the image, so it creates like these bright halos around just certain objects or whatever, depending on the scene. Yeah. So the one where it's like really prominent, where even normal people watching the movie, not somebody like me who's like high into digital quality or video quality, fidelity, all that stuff.
Right.
Like when Darth Maul is holding that lightsaber and it the second side comes out for the first time, you know, on Naboo, there is like the brightest fucking halo around that whole thing. It's so annoying. So there are a lot of it'll happen around characters, you know, any scenes with like a lot of high contrast, you'll just see a bright halo popping around things because of
maybe he's an angel.
They're all angels apparently. All of them. Darth Maul, Padme. Yeah.
Padme I knew was an angel. Darth Maul I assumed was an angel.
A fallen angel.
Yes.
Yeah, but that DVD was so bad. So I was really glad, you know, however long, like 10 freaking years later to get that Blu-ray and have that issue at least fixed along with a few other things. But yeah, I don't know what else if they changed anything else for especially episode 2 and 3. I know there was a difference between even the Attack of the Clones home release versus what most people saw in theaters. Which, did you ever know about that? Again, 2002, film was still the big player in terms of movie theater projections. Again, Attack of the Clones, first major motion picture to be shot fully on digital cameras. So the film prints had already been made and shipped out to theaters, but then George Lucas and ILM made one last minute change to the movie that, because, you know, you didn't have to worry about physical printing for the digital copies to like the 3 or 4 theaters that could handle it.
Right.
At the end during the wedding, I vividly remember Anakin's right hand during the wedding. There's a close-up of Anakin and Padme's hands during the wedding, and his robot hand is just dangling there. And it wasn't until I saw it on DVD that they
grasp hands.
Yeah, that he clutches Padme's hand, reaches over and grabs her hand. So I don't know if the dangling version is available anywhere to see, but I very much vividly remember that. Only because I did see it a couple times, and between like my first and second time watching it, I had already read that the digital version was different for that very reason. So I was like, yep, I'm going to commit this to memory because goodness knows later on I will never see the shot ever again.
Now, can you find that on YouTube or anything?
I'm sure it's got to be out there somewhere. I mean, there might be another few differences here and there, but it's a very minor change as they go. But I still just found it interesting that they waited that long to make a change like that, you know, and that they caught it in for the digital releases. And then if you're a quality freak like me, being that Attack of the Clones is the first digital film, I find it interesting that it was shot at around 2K or 1080p as home theater resolutions go. So therefore, we will never get a real proper 4K version of Attack of the Clones. I think Revenge of the Sith might have been shot at about the same resolution. I'm not entirely sure about that one, but all I know is Attack of the Clones for sure is stuck at that 2K resolution forever.
Which, I mean, at the time was pretty fucking good.
Oh yeah, sure. Like it was definitely groundbreaking, especially for 2002. And I appreciate that Lucas was the one to say, "Hey, there's this technology. Let's use it. It'll make things a lot easier." And even as a film purist myself, it makes a lot of sense for movies like that because you're going to do so much post-production with it digitally, you know, that to skip the process of scanning, digitizing, adding the layer of CGI, and then spitting that back out onto film anyways, you know?
Right.
That all makes sense. My issue, or the reason I find it funny is that, any movie on film theoretically can be pushed to about 8K resolution. So we'll someday get likely a nice 8K cleaned up version of Wizard of Oz, Citizen Kane, Casablanca.
Right.
Yeah. But not Attack of the Clones, which is just really funny to me. So, yeah. So, yeah, it's just one of those things where it's just funny to see as we move to the future. Like George Lucas was definitely locked into technology available at the time. But, like a movie like Jurassic Park, only a few shots here and there will you notice that textures on the CGI is looking real rough. But because that thing is still mastered on film, we'll still get like a nice clean version. And when you go back and watch that movie, they use a lot more animatronics than you remember. So those animatronics will look great,
Mm-hmm.
It's that long shot of the Brontosaurus when they first get on the island that one's going to look a little rough for sure. I remember watching that movie in IMAX for its 20th anniversary, and I enjoyed that experience. Definitely that Brontosaurus was not meant to be blown onto a 70-foot tall screen. So,
fair enough.
Yeah. But anyways,
you're talking about the early 90s there,
Oh yeah, I mean it's one of the pioneering movies for CGI. The other one would be Terminator 2 for sure. Terminator 2 I think is the big leap in CGI, and then Jurassic Park is the one that's remembered because kids were able to watch that one on like the R-rated Terminator 2. But everybody always forgets about that T-1000, man. The things that were done with that T-1000. Walking through like the
battleground
prison bars. What's that?
Oh, okay. Nothing.
Yeah, like all the liquid Terminator, stuff like that, when Sarah Connor like smashes a bar into it and then its head turns into its hands and then its head forms somewhere else. That's some groundbreaking stuff right there. It's just, but everybody remembers Jurassic Park as the big one.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyways, that's been our film history lesson for this one.
Always worth it.
Yeah. We'll have to, but yeah, I am curious about any changes that happened between DVD and Blu-ray for
So I found a page
releases.
detailing a bunch of changes, and give me just 1 second. This is on Wikipedia, and it is the list of changes in Star Wars re-releases. So, yeah. It goes from theatrical release through Blu-ray, so...
And that's for all 6 films?
Looks like it. I mean, there's a lot of
original
info here, so I'm not able to read it on the fly, but...
Right.
There's a lot of shit.
I mean,
it looks like it's got
just saying.
Pan and scan, it's got DVD, it's got home release, it's got DVD releases, Blu-ray, it's got the digital collection. So there's a lot there's a lot of info here that I will have to dedicate some time to later. But for now,
right,
we are talking about Brain Invaders. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. That's the one.
And that is the 39th episode of the Clone Wars, as far as chronology is concerned. It is Season 2, Episode 8, production number 212, originally released on December 4th of 2009, to a total of 2.12 million viewers. And this is the conclusion to our pentalogy of Geonosian episodes, correct?
Yes. At least that's my understanding.
That is my understanding as well. So we finally made it there, and we'll have to see how this stuff fares. This 5-story arc fares in our viewpoint as a 5-parter. So,
right.
Fortune cookie this week. Oh, sorry. Directed by Stuart Lee, who I think directed last week's episode as well. And then the writers on this are Andrew Kinsberg, Drew Z. Greenberg, and Brian Larson is what I have.
Yep.
So, fortune cookie this week is attachment is not compassion. Short and brief, a bit awkward in statement, but I've got this coming out of the mouth of Anakin Skywalker.
Yep, that was my guess as well.
So,
yeah.
Especially because later he talks about something that I didn't write down. But,
right. The episode gets there. Like we've discussed, sometimes the fortune cookie has nothing to do with the episode. As we will discuss, this one thematically definitely ties in with where the episode tries to get there. I don't know if it was meaningful throughout the episode, but we'll get there. We'll talk about that towards the end.
Okay.
But
fair enough.
So where do we start off with this one?
The newsreel is a recap of, I guess, the last 4 episodes. The narrator declares victory on Geonosis. We've recaptured the planet. Talks about Luminara's little side mission, discovering the Queen and her ability of reanimation to kind of make these zombie Geonosins.
Which the newsreel gives the Queen a name. Did we never caught her name from the previous episode, did we?
No, this is the first time that the Queen is named.
And I don't even remember seeing her name
in the
when I was in the credits, or even when I was like scanning through Wikipedia after I took my notes, which I found interesting. I just always referred to her as the Queen.
Yeah,
and I think even that Wiki page did as well.
She is the Genosian Queen Karina the Great.
Yes.
So I definitely remember seeing it last week, but I don't remember where I came upon that information. Yep.
Yeah.
Side note, she is 8.6 meters long. So how about that? That's like pushing 30 feet-ish.
Yeah, she was pretty big.
She's a big old fat Karina the Great. So...
Yeah, so then the rest of the newsreel just basically describes that the temple was destroyed.
The temple's destroyed, and they got PTL, and so it transitions very nicely from the newsreel into the actual activities of this episode, and that is that Anakin and what seems like every other Jedi are on a mission to take PTL back to Coruscant. So that they can kind of debrief him and get some info out of him.
And have him stand trial, yeah.
And have him stand trial. So they're loading him up on a ship, and as the clones and PTL are boarding the ship, going on the ship, Ahsoka and Luminara are coming off, and when they cross paths... PTL totally... it looks like he's like checking them both out, and then he's like doing some click and trill. I don't know what he's saying, but
right.
It definitely looks like he's just ogling as these two young ladies walk by, which I thought was weird. Also, what I thought was odd is that the beginning of... Was it the beginning of the last episode where we see the last time that we saw Ahsoka and Barriss, they were leaving.
Right. They were going to go get medical help, or they're taking a break or something. They're getting some checkup.
Yep, they're going on some R&R or whatever, so I guess that's over, which is odd because this takes place immediately following the episode previous.
Yeah.
And the episode previous takes place immediately following the episode before that. So we're talking like overnight, maybe.
Like I said, I think in the last episode I discussed how the sandstorm progression showed to me that there was some progression of time.
Okay.
So I don't think that last episode took place over like one day. Like there's maybe a couple of days with one night in between or something, right?
So, I mean, either way, Max, these two Padawans have gone for medical treatment and
like 48 hours maybe.
For maybe 48 hours. And that doesn't even include travel time to wherever they were going. So
there's probably some med facility nearby or something. I don't know.
Well, I think we
they talk about invasion, Geonosis invasion, so
yeah, I'm not really sure. I feel like these things were written independently, but two of the same guys wrote this episode as the last episode.
Right. They're clearly thinking about this as an arc. So there's more connective tissue here than other arcs we have seen by far. We can definitely discuss the connective tissue a little bit more, but despite them being gone for such a short time, there is at least an explanation of them disappearing for one episode and then coming back at the beginning of this episode rather than just having them gone, never mentioned, then coming back. We discussed last time that I would have been fine even if there was just a one-liner, but I still appreciate nonetheless that there is some mention of them or reasoning for why they are not in the previous episode, whereas in other arcs we have seen,
they're just not around.
Right, we've discussed
it where
somebody's
just not around, right?
Yeah, like Obi-Wan will be on a planet, and then the very next episode, they just never mention him at all, and we don't know anything about why he's not helping out the people of Mandalore.
We definitely get that we get that with Mace Windu, sort of, in this episode, because he was definitely part of the initial siege of the planet,
right?
And we find out that he's on Dantooine. And so I guess, he helped everybody land on this planet and then took off and went and started battling on another planet.
Yep. Pulled away.
He went to Dantooine. His troops were victorious, but they took heavy casualties, what it sounds like, and they need some help. So Kiadi Mundi's back.
Yep.
And he fills everybody in on these details, like, hey, we need to help Mace. Here's what we need to do. We need to go to the medical facility at Ord Cestus.
Yep.
Which I guess is a planet or a system. I don't know. I didn't look that one up. Anakin's like, no, we're taking PTL to Coruscant, so that's not on the way. That's not, that's... I don't know. Like, we got two different missions here. We can't be in two places at once, essentially. His suggestion is to let the Padawans do it.
Right.
Obi-Wan agrees, and he's like, cool, you guys take a freighter. Like, we'll join you afterwards. We're going to drop PTL on Coruscant, and then we'll meet up, and we'll get you over to Dantooine, and we'll complete that thing. To jump ahead a little bit, later we see a whole slew of fucking Jedi Masters that are all accomplishing the same mission, and then two Padawans by themselves.
Yeah.
We've got Luminara, we've got Kiadi Mundi, we've got Anakin, we've got Obi-Wan. Yep. And we've got Captain Rex. All on one ship taking one prisoner back to Coruscant.
High value target, man. I don't
know. I mean, even when we had Nute Gunray, we didn't have that many Jedi.
Yeah. I thought this was odd too that Anakin couldn't go with Ahsoka. Or any of them. This is another...
like Luminara and her Padawan couldn't do one mission, and...
the other remaining four, not Ahsoka,
Yeah,
couldn't have gone.
We have 2 masters with apprentices, and 2 other Jedi masters also, and they very easily could have split this like 3 and 3 with like 2 masters and 1 apprentice per thing. Especially since Obi-Wan's like, yeah, just take the ship, we'll drop him off, then we'll come and meet you.
Right.
So I get it that it's supposed to be like an easy thing to like go to the med facility and pick up some supplies, but if you gotta wait for like somebody else anyway, when there's a whole group of fucking people, like, just split that group up.
Right. It was clearly just there to get the story through and where they need the story to go, and then they came up with this reasoning.
That, and I think that they had to kind of, I guess if this is the wrap up of this particular battle on Geonosis, we got to get all of our players off of the rock, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, we do need a little bit of an experience, like with this thing, and Ahsoka's gonna have like this personal challenge. So we'll put Ahsoka and Barriss together, even though they're supposed to have already been somewhere else on R&R. And we'll just put all the Jedi Masters together and be like, yep, they're taking PTL, and like these girls have their own thing. So, I mean, I guess it is what it is. Logistically, this is a poor plan, is what I'm getting at.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So, at this point, we cut to a bunch of clones sleeping. This is outside the temple from last week, which is why I say this takes place immediately after the last episode. I guess these are the guys that survived the mission and made it past Queen Karina. So afterwards, they fucking crash and they're sleeping outside taking a nap.
Just hanging out. Yeah, just hanging out while everything else is getting cleaned up.
There's a commander that walks up and just fires into the air to wake all these clones up. We see this, what we find out is an egg hatch. Worm comes out, definitely gets one of these clones. He isn't affected by the mind control like immediately. Just for convenience, if we need these other things to happen first. Spoiler alert, there are many brains that are invaded in this episode. Brain invaders, right?
Yes, yeah.
So when we see it in the future, it's like instantaneous. These worms like go up their nose, they like kind of swirl through their sinuses, and then there's a visual effect of the organism taking over.
Yeah, like eyes rolled back, arch back happens.
And then like an auditory cue as well.
Yeah.
Where
a little bit of screaming. Yeah. But so then the trooper we find that gets hit first, his name is Scythe. Right. So we find that out shortly later because he doesn't wake up immediately during the shot that happens in the air for everybody to wake up, but he eventually does wake up. And all the clones follow Ahsoka and Barriss onto that ship, correct?
Correct.
And then Scythe follows up behind, and you can see he has his backpack, and they position the shot in a way that he has a bunch of eggs in there. But
he's got a backpack full of eggs.
When and where did he get all these eggs?
That was a question that I had. I don't know.
Because he just kind of grabs his backpack, and we don't... Like, they're leaving right then. So, again, this is there's no time passage here. It's pretty instantaneous.
I'm guessing that they're not right outside where... So the clones are right outside where the temple is. The ship, I don't think is. So he probably... all of the other clones are walking off when Pulsar, which is... we learn a couple of clones this week. Pulsar, Scythe, and then so on. But we've met these two. Pulsar complains to his commander that they're not bred to run errands, and his commander's like, no, you're bred to follow orders. And then all the clones clear out. He wakes up Scythe, and then we cut to them walking towards the ship. So I'm thinking probably what happened is that he kind of hung behind and scooped up some eggs. It definitely does present a timing issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say,
because how does he even break off from the group at any point, right? Like, that's my other question. If they're
because he was already lagging behind because he was still sleeping.
Mm-hmm. I guess.
But
then if he's lagging behind, but then like it just pushes everything back. Because if he's lagging behind because he's still sleeping already, then it just pushes everything back more for him to need to catch up for them to get off of that rock. You know,
for sure.
Right. So
you are not wrong.
Right. So, yeah, that was my one issue right here for sure. But this is the plot of the episode, so it's a thing that needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
They could have just gone about it slightly better.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways.
Yeah, I feel like he could have like still been in the temple or doing like a perimeter like.
Right. Just one less sweep or something. They could have explained that.
Right. When that egg hatches, he could have been doing, some sort of security patrol. The worm goes up his nose. The takeover happens immediately, and then you see him picking up an egg, and then we cut to the outside where the commander wakes up the rest of the clones. All that shit happens like normal. Scythe walks up from, off camera or whatever, and Pulsar's like, yo, man, like, book it, we gotta go. We got new orders.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think that would have been a good choice.
Right.
So.
So we just see he has a bag full of eggs.
It's got
How many eggs? I don't. Yeah.
A bag full.
A bag full. So anyways, everybody goes on their merry way on their separate missions, right?
Mm-hmm. We're on the ship. Barriss announces, ready to jump or whatever, so they take off. So our A plot, B plot essentially is plot A is Ahsoka and Barriss, and plot B is every other Jedi.
Yep.
So Ahsoka and Barriss look like they're trying to catch some Z's. Ahsoka is all rolling around back and forth, can't sleep. Did you notice that she has her lightsaber under her pillow?
No, I did not.
She totally does.
Interesting.
So, she's one of those sleep on your pistol type paranoid people, I suppose.
It's a very James Bondian move right there, yeah.
Yep. So she's kind of thrashing around, and it looks like Barriss is sleeping, and Barriss is like, what? What is it? Mm-hmm. And Ahsoka's like, it's too quiet. There's been too much battling going on in the past few days, which is why their whole like R&R thing from last episode also doesn't make sense. Because the way that Ahsoka is talking is that they've been in the action solid up until this point.
Yeah, I didn't think about that part until you just brought it up here. That's weird. Because she would have had like a night of this already. Maybe it's still affecting her,
I guess potentially.
Like she's got some minor PTSD going on, right? So she needs like a white noise machine to drown out the cries of her friends from dying, I guess, or something. I don't.
Yeah, no. I got nothing on that one. But Barriss's advice is enjoy it while it lasts.
Right.
Basically, shut up and let me sleep. And Ahsoka's like, nope, not gonna happen. I can't do that. Let's go get some food.
Right.
So instead of Barriss being like, no, I'm sleeping, go get fucking food by yourself, they both go
and get food.
Yep. They head out to get some food.
Which is like a weird alternative. Like if I wake up at 3 a.m. and I can't sleep, I can't go back to sleep. Food is not the first thing I usually run towards. I don't know.
I think of food often.
Right.
Immediately after eating lunch or while I'm eating lunch, I'm thinking about what I'm going to make for dinner and what I get to eat later. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I get it. They're probably hungry. They've been battling. They've been out on the battlefield. Like, there's a legit, I guess, 24-hour service cantina / cafeteria here. So,
yeah, it's real nice.
Like, hey, let's go get some food.
Real convenient, yeah.
The food that they eat does not look too appetizing, but we'll get to that. Scythe himself, at this point, heads into a clone barracks, for lack of a better term, and he rolls out a bunch of eggs, and we've got some more brain invasion going on. So his crew is getting larger. We cut back to Ahsoka and Barriss, and I'm guessing this is in the middle of the night because they're the only two in the cafeteria. Mm-hmm. My notes on this is, hey, they have forks, and they're eating some type of cubed-like food. Couldn't tell you what it is.
Nope.
They talk about... they kind of chit-chat for a while and talk about a bunch of stuff, but Ahsoka is talking about the difference between being keepers of the peace and warriors, and they have a bit of a philosophical debate as to what the difference is. Is there a difference? How they're supposed to approach this war and whatever happens after the war. Mm-hmm. Barriss is talking about Master Windu, which I'm not real sure why they had to put like Mace's name in there and it couldn't just be Luminara, because to me that would make more sense, because she asks Ahsoka, well, what did your master tell you? But you were just talking about Mace Windu and not Luminara.
Your own.
Right. Yeah. So it's just like streamlining, like standardizing things that that make my brain happy. And that little hiccup, shall we say, hangs up. Like, my brain gets hung up on it, and I think about it far too long, and then I lose the rest of this conversation.
Well, yeah. Also, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I don't even really remember this conversation, only because it came at a weird point in this episode where, with Scythe releasing the eggs, like, that's a major plot point, and they build that up. Then that tension immediately dies because we cut to the two Padawans eating and having this random conversation. Mm-hmm. The pacing is just off here. Mm-hmm. And it just drops in just a, like I said, strange spot that I didn't connect with this conversation at all, because there are so many other things happening. But yeah, I agree with you that they were trying to have this like high level conversation at the same time, like the birth of the monsters were happening.
Yeah, it's kind of whatever, you know. Yeah. Ahsoka essentially calls Anakin a radical, I guess, within the Jedi Order, and she says, you know, how should I put this? He will always do what he needs to get whatever he needs to do done. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if this was meant as like foreshadowing to the future, knowing that, you know, we know that Anakin falls to the dark side.
Right.
I would be surprised if there is a viewer or a listener out there that at this point has seen Episode 1, Attack of the Clones, and the first 39 episodes of the Clone Wars and doesn't know what Anakin's fate is, right?
Right.
That would be an anomaly. I guess it's possible. So I wonder if it is meant to be a explanatory statement of his behavior in the future, or not?
I'm sure it's leaning that way, right? You know, like it fits, it works, and these writers are writing from a perspective that this is all coming out after the movies, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, they're backfilling in information as well.
Okay.
So, I can see it working for that.
Ahsoka also makes the statement that because Anakin is the way he is, she doesn't really know how he's going to respond to peacetime.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it's at this point where she is asking Luminara, like, what is peace? What does that mean to you? Like, what should that mean to us? What are we going to do at that point? You know, and that's where the final question of, is keeping the peace and being a warrior like one and the same, even though we're not supposed to be warriors, you know, in peacetime or whatever. We don't get an answer because we cut to the bridge. Scythe plus 2 other clone troopers walk in, and the pilot's like, "Hey, Scythe, you checking up on us? We're all good here, like doing our jobs." And yeah, they get wasted. They get shot.
Yeah, real quick. Mm-hmm.
So at this point, we have nobody in the bridge for a while. We cut back to the dining hall where 2 clones come in. Ahsoka names them as Ox and Edge, and says something to the effect of, "Hey, you wanna join us for square foods?"
Yeah,
cube foods, I guess. And they pull their blasters on our Lady Jedi and don't fare so well. We got some cool flippery, I guess.
Yeah, I made a note about the flippery as well. Yeah, because Ahsoka runs behind a table, but Barriss grabs one and does like a backflip and a spin herself
while upending the table.
While flipping the table on its end as a shield against the clones, which I thought was pretty sweet.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Ahsoka ends up using the Force to just force push them into the wall and knock them out. Then nearly immediately we get 2 other clones that come in. So they've got their blasters drawn, and Ahsoka and Barriss pulled their lightsabers on them. These are not brain-invaded clones, and they figured that out pretty quickly. That is
the clones
and Havoc.
Yeah, because the clones basically are saying that they're responding to the noise, and
yeah, they heard blaster fires that they came to investigate, and it looks like, when they walk in, it looks like Ahsoka and Barriss just killed these 2 fucking clones.
Right. So everybody's just concerned about the situation. And in order for the 2 new clones, Trap and Havoc, to gain Ahsoka and Barriss's trust, they lay their weapons on the ground.
Mm-hmm. I thought that was a good touch. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty effective means of communication. So,
right. So then one of them questions to check if 2 clones were trying to attack the Jedi, then maybe the bridge might have been taken as well.
Mm-hmm.
So then the Padawans head off to the bridge to check that out.
Mm-hmm. Havoc is left to stay behind as essentially a security guard. Which, do we see him ever again? Or is he just...
Not going to lie, there are so many clones in this episode that I didn't... After a while, I stopped keeping track.
Yeah, so these guys have their helmets off, right?
Yeah.
And one of them... They have different eye color, which I thought was odd, because usually the clones have brown eyes. One of these guys has blue eyes, is gray, and has an S tattooed above his left eyebrow.
Yeah, I will say this episode did a really good job in making sure all the unmasked clones had a lot of markings. Like Scythe, for sure, I made a note. He had a buzz cut and he had like a tattoo on his forehead or something like that, right?
Yep.
But then after that point, there were so many clones that I just moved on with life rather than trying to memorize who was who.
Yeah, Pulsar had like the weird like shaved bits in his 70s sideburn chops.
Yeah, he had like weird outlined sideburns, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of them had like gray hair too.
Ox and Edge both have helmets on, so you can't tell from them. And then Trap and Havoc are the other two that were named in this episode. But like I said, one of them's got blue eyes and gray hair and an S, and the other one has longer hair ish. I mean, at least for a clone. So we cut over to the good guy's Star Destroyer in hyperspace with every other Jedi except for Ahsoka and Barriss, I think. Because there's a shit ton of them. And Luminara, but we almost hit like mid-conversation, and Luminara's like, nope, haven't talked to him. Like, they should have checked in by now. Haven't talked to him. They're not answering. And Anakin's like, oh, something's wrong. Obi-Wan's trying to keep the peace, and he's like, hey, calm down. Like, have some faith in your padawans here. And
well, Obi-Wan also throws a burn towards Anakin where
for sure.
He's like, you don't check in, so leave Ahsoka alone.
And Anakin's like, yeah, well, fair enough.
Good point. Yeah.
Good point.
Is it Obi-Wan that says that Anakin and his Padawan have become more alike than they realize? Is that?
It is.
Is this where that happens?
Yep, this is where that happens. And then Ki-Adi-Mundi's like, hey, don't forget, we got PTL and we need to go interrogate him.
Right.
So Annie's talking to Rex, and he's like, hey, keep an ear out and let me know what happens with this Ahsoka situation. Nothing comes of this. There's a lot of little, like, side tidbits that occur and have no bearing whatsoever on anything in this episode.
Which is bizarre, because it is a busier episode for sure.
It is pretty busy. I agree with you.
Yeah, it's a busy episode. The next thing that happens is we show Scythe is still on the bridge, right? Back on the other ship. Yep. He engages autopilot and security shields. Mm-hmm. And Ahsoka, Barriss, and Trap are running right towards the bridge, and they get like that force-shielded red wall thing that we saw back in episode 1.
Yep.
Blocking their way.
Yep.
Barriss is trying to make her way through the controls. She's like trying to hack that way. Mm-hmm. And then from behind we see Trap kind of readying his blaster to shoot at the two Padawans, but Barriss has her spidey sense about her and then figures out that it's happening.
So is that what happened? I thought that like another clone that was already affected like came in to shoot them.
Nope, it was Trap.
Okay.
Yeah, because he's the only clone that hangs around. There's no other clone that shows up at this moment.
Okay. Weird.
Because Ahsoka does name him again. So they get Barriss' spider sense takes over. She ignites her saber, flips over. Ahsoka is caught off guard by all of this, but then joins in. They disarm him and they kind of grab him or something like that, and then the worm kind of pops out of his nose and then tries to get into Barriss. Like it starts breaching the void, I guess. It starts trying to bridge that void between their two faces. And as the worm is coming towards Barriss, she has to kill him and ignites her saber right into his chest. And then as he goes down, Ahsoka kills the brain worm that crawls out of there. So then this is when Ahsoka says that, he was my friend, Trap was my friend, and we fought together and or something like that. So
yeah, he wouldn't attack me for no good reason.
Yeah, and then it's the brain worm, as they figure out. So
yeah, Luminara I think immediately calls this thing like a parasite or something. I think this is a good point to bring it up. I find it odd that Obi-Wan and Anakin and Luminara all saw these brain invaders you know, like yesterday, and had like a big thing where they had to like fight against them. Like, what do you do? And then they don't fill anybody else in on this information.
I guess because they didn't expect it to come back, right?
Yeah, but you would think still that there would be some debriefing and
like some sort of report to file.
Mm-hmm. And I guess because the two padawans of two of the Jedi Knights that were involved with this battle, because they were on R&R, they went to the Holiday Inn for a day or whatever, and they went swimming. I don't really know. Whatever they did, they weren't there, so they weren't there for the debriefing. Then they come back and they don't get brought up to speed. It's just like,
well, I think because they're being sent on their own mission, like whatever happened that day on Geonosis isn't really their concern. Like Luminara, Obi-Wan, Anakin are going to go file their report separately from their own ship. You know, they've been separated already, right? So, you know, it's...
I mean, I just feel like, you know, fucking set me up for success, man. Like, you saw some shit yesterday, and you can't fucking fill me in? I'd be pissed. Like, if I was Ahsoka, once, you know, she lives through all this shit and gets reunited with Anakin, I'd be like, yo, Anakin, what the fuck, man?
Again, it's like, I don't know, if you show up after the battle is over and you're only there to take troops off the field or bring medical supplies from one place to the other, you know, I don't feel, if the war is still ongoing, that it's in your best use of time to then, well, let's, before we go, have a sit down and let me explain to you.
Lorenzo,
like,
they got enough time to take every fucking Jedi general and put them on one ship and
drive surely.
One guy across.
But, like, you know, it's... I'm only making this reference because I've been binging the shit out of Ken Burns' Vietnam War, but it's not like, you know, the person getting sent to Hue is knowing what the fuck is happening in Saigon, you know, because, like, they're concerned about the fighting that's happening closer to them and not the shit that's happening in Saigon, right?
I totally agree with you, but I think a more apt reference would be if there was two people that were fighting in Saigon and one of them led a group of individuals into a particular situation, survived, came back, and didn't fill in person number two. That's the way that I'm viewing this. Like, they're all in the same fucking battle, but
that battle is over. That's what I'm saying, though. Like, that battle is done, right? So, like, somebody is showing up from Hue to Saigon, and that battle is done, and they got to go back to Hue. Well, it doesn't matter what happened the last 3 days in Saigon because they're out of there. They're going back to Hue. You know, like, oh, this is we're set here. Don't worry, just right. You know what I'm saying? The battle. Like, it'd be one thing if they were still fighting on Geonosis. Then yes, you get the fill in, right?
You don't think a parasitic worm that turns people into zombies would be worth mentioning?
I mean, in light conversation, maybe, but not as like an official debriefing of any sort with the Padawans.
Okay.
Once you get to Coruscant and they're like, you tell Yoda,
mm-hmm.
You know, you let Yoda know when you get to Coruscant.
I feel like Yoda already fucking knows.
Right, yeah, so it's out. Like, that information's out, but then Ahsoka and them show up, and Anakin might have mentioned it briefly, but really the important thing is like, oh, Mace needs supplies. We're not going to sit here and chit-chat any longer, you know? Like, this is the matter of life and death here. We got to get these supplies to these people. I will fill you in the shit later, but this is not stuff that you need to know. You know?
Speaking of Anakin telling Ahsoka things, is it now that she brings up how Anakin once worked with a traitor? She basically brings up the plot of Hidden Enemy.
I remember this, but I honestly don't remember when it happens.
I don't remember if it's now or later.
It might have been right about now because of it might have been when the two clones were unconscious. Actually, it might have been a quick mention that Anakin had been betrayed before. That I think is when it happened. So we might have gone past that point already. But
yeah, I don't remember. I don't know exactly when it happens, but Ahsoka is talking to Barriss. I think it's when Ahsoka says, "Oh, Trap wouldn't fucking shoot me because he's my buddy or whatever," and then Barriss says something, and Ahsoka says, "Oh, well, my master Anakin did tell me that one time he was working with a clone, and that clone went rogue because he was getting a payoff from Ventress, and he was a traitor and this and that and whatever." And Barriss's comment back was like, "Yeah, but this situation's like way different. Like we've got brain worms and mind control and weird shit going on. They don't know the extent of it yet."
It is during when the first two clones go down, because when the other two clones are standing there, Barriss says that it didn't feel like a full betrayal, I think, is when she mentions it. I remember her saying something to that effect too. I could be wrong, but I feel like the two other clones were unconscious on the ground, and she was looking at them. She was like, "This didn't feel like that."
Okay.
Right. Something like that.
So that
was her reasoning. I don't know what she thinks it feels like or how she's able to tell that it didn't feel like that, but
it just feels a little different. A little bit different,
Yeah. Carry on.
So they're walking down the hall. They're headed toward the bridge in a different direction, I'm guessing. Ahsoka hears some Geonosis click trill.
Yes, yep.
So it turns out that it is just
the clones.
The clones that have already been taken over. And Scythe is brain invading some other clone whose name I'm not really sure. I've got a note that says that Ahsoka and Barry get attacked and kill the eggs instead. So they kind of, I guess they peek in on Scythe and his new brain invaded cronies. And then he comes after Ahsoka and Barriss. There's an exchange of eggs that are sliced to bits instead of...
Well, okay, so Scythe tries to run after them with a couple of the eggs, and Ahsoka and Barriss force pull the eggs, and as they pull them, they basically go to bat with the lightsabers and cut the eggs in half.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
There's another clone behind... So the way they get spotted is a clone just happens upon behind them, starts shooting at them. They enter the room. The clones in the big room are like, "Hey, they're shooting. Oh, look, they're the padawans." So the fight scene happens, and then they escape into the ventilation shaft above.
Yes.
They at this point, after they had killed Trap, they made the plan to try and contact Master Fisto, so that when the ship gets to the location, that they know to not let people on board and to quarantine the ship because of all this shit that's happening.
And then, so they decide they have two objectives. That's one. The other one, Barriss decides she's going to head to the reactor room to disable the thrusters.
Yes.
It's unclear as to whether or not these have to be like sublight thrusters. So they're going to continue through hyperspace, and then once they drop out of hyperspace, essentially they're not going anywhere.
Right. They'll just be a dead ship.
Right. They'll just be a dead ship, and they'll be on quarantine, and Kid Fisto will know what's going on, and our Lady Jedi will be okay.
Yep.
This is the plan. We cut over to the med station. Ahsoka does get to the point where she can talk to Fisto, which is great. So she has
informed
succeeded.
about the worms. Yeah.
She has succeeded on her half of the mission. Barriss, however, is not quite as lucky. She drops out of the ceiling and kind of takes a corner, and then is just shocked into submission onto the floor. Scythe comes out and says, if it's one thing we clones know, it's how to stop a Jedi.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
I mean, they're the ones working in tandem with these Jedi. They really should know how the Jedi operate. They know how they work. They're meant to, other than every now and then,
they're meant to fight droids. Like, if there's one thing we know, it's how to fight Clankas and also to stop the Jedi. You know?
I mean, they're still observing how their generals work, right? You know? Like, it'd be odd if all these clones didn't understand how the Jedi operate or their strategy or what they're thinking. So that's what I got out of this statement, you know.
I have noticed throughout this episode so far that you are viewing things in a very different way than I am.
Yeah.
So that's...
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying this makes it better. I'm just saying that I can see why he would say this. It
makes zero sense to me. I'm just going to put it out there.
I mean, I don't want to open the literal can of worms until a little bit later. There's a lot.
Brain worms?
Yeah. There's a lot about this episode that doesn't make sense to me either.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel
like he might as well like nudge the fucking trooper next to him and be like, Order 66, am I right? You know?
I don't disagree. These writers here are definitely... We'll get to another scene. They're very much playing forward. They're playing the long game. They're playing the fact that you would know the ins and out of this universe. The ins and out of everything of this universe, right?
Okay. We can agree on that. So let's continue forward, and then we'll get to whatever it is that you just threw a hint out to.
Right. So she's on the Barriss is on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Then this is when she gets wormed up, right?
She does get brain invaded.
Yeah.
Enter Jedi zombie.
Right. So then we cut back to Ahsoka.
She's talking to Rex.
Yep.
Rex puts on Anakin. So they're filled in on what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Next we see some brain invaded zombie clone troopers in file. Anakin tells Ahsoka what the new plan is, I guess. And then as that's happening, Barriss just shows up like in the command center or the communication center.
There is as much of a jump scare attempt as is possible in a Cartoon Network children's show.
Uh-huh.
I appreciate the attempt.
I liked it.
It's a definite... All it needed was just a slight tweaking, and it would have worked so much better. The timing is off. That's, I think, the issue. The timing is very off. There's still this string score that tries to help the jump scare, but the timing of all of it's a little off. Like, you see her, and the strings come like a half beat too late sort of thing, as does Ahsoka's reaction.
Because they were caught by surprise, because they didn't know she was going to be there.
Right. But also, like, the camera pan itself doesn't help the jump scare. Again, it's a good attempt, and also it's because it's like a scene that's taking place in like full brightness, which is also a little odd.
Mm-hmm.
I have questions about the next couple of things that go on. This is the one thing I messaged you before about, and we never messaged each other about these episodes before we sit down, because we're obviously going to sit down and talk about it for a while.
Yeah, we don't even really like pre-show talk about, hey, did you like this? Did you not like this? Like, nothing. I mean,
we just get right into it.
We do our info separately, and it all comes together organically on the show, which is why sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't. Like, we're not trying to set shit up and sync opinions or anything at all.
Right. Nope. So we just get into it when we record. I had to watch this next sequence like 4 or 5 times. So
I definitely marked when it happened, and it's 13 minutes 20 seconds. There's a little interchange between Ahsoka and Barriss, and take it away.
There's the audio editing gets fucked up. I don't know how else to say it. It's the audio editing and the audio mixing both get all sorts of oddly jacked up. So there's the string sting that happens during the first jump scare, the reveal that Barriss is in the room. It cuts back to Ahsoka. She says something like, "Oh, I didn't see you there. You gave me a fright," or whatever.
She says, "Barriss, you're back. Were you successful?" Right.
So then it cuts back to Barriss just staring at her. Then there's another orchestral stinger that happens, and it's not natural. Somebody fucked up the mixing or the editing in this case. And then it cuts back to Ahsoka one more time, just like, "Hey, Barriss, are you okay?"
Yeah.
And then there's
what's wrong?
Right. And then the music jumps in at the middle of something else, and it cuts back to Barriss, and it's like silence or something like that. The order might be wrong, but again, the editing for the music is all sorts of fucked up here. Like,
so I'm gonna be honest with you. I watched this on DVD.
Right.
Didn't notice at all.
Yeah, that's why I asked you.
It was all pretty fluid. So I'm actually going to pull this up on Netflix.
Yeah, please tell me if it's different on Netflix. That's why I messaged you, just to see if the Netflix version got fucked up somehow, and nobody caught it, because it's super jarring, and not purposely jarring in the way like the jump scare happens, and then everything else for the next 15 seconds or so is weird. Like it almost seems like this is where a commercial break would have been, and that would make sense, except that the jump scare happens and it's just a shot change. There's no, I'm not gonna lie, like watching these on Netflix, the show does a really good job, but like I could not guess where the commercial breaks would be. The episodes definitely keep flowing for the most part.
Yeah, usually. I mean, occasionally there is definitely that, okay, this was a commercial break. Like,
right.
We can tell that.
But this one for sure just felt like there might have been a commercial break in between, but then it happens 2 more times within the span of the next 10, 15 seconds or something like that. So
I am going to rewatch this a couple times right now and give you my opinion on that.
Yeah, let me know if this is what you saw.
I'm not seeing, I guess nothing is like standing out to me. There's definitely like a moment of silence, and then it's like that musical build. They use like the same one like separately 5 seconds apart.
Right. That's what throws me off though. It's just it's poor editing. It's really bad. Because that's what made me... I really thought my internet fucked up for a second. And then like it skipped a shot or something like that.
Because it goes... Like, it's Ahsoka talking.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? You are probably totally right. Because probably here's what happened. Mm-hmm. Ahsoka is talking. And then we get the... Dun! With the quote-unquote jump scare, and we see Barriss offy. Then it probably cut to commercial. Then when it comes back from commercial, we see Ahsoka, and she's silent. And then we get the dun.
Right.
And cut. Okay. I'm with.
So that's
all right. I'm with you.
Yeah. Like I feel like it was one like last shock surprise before commercial. And there was just no way to stitch these together in a way that was coherent. It's the cut from jump, orchestral stinger, to dead silence, to return of that. That just, it just annoyed the shit out of me. So, Just didn't know what was happening. But anyways, Barriss is basically non-responsive.
Yeah.
And they start fighting. Barriss and Ahsoka.
My note is fight! Exclamation point.
Right.
And then Ahsoka flees.
It's a pretty good fight amongst
good fight.
Two padawans in their prime. And I like that Barriss she's standing behind one of those just the information screens that we've seen throughout the Star Wars.
The glass map of
whatever
concentric circles and shit that you can move lights around on, which I don't know how to read that.
Right.
I can read a little bit of Arabic. I can't read one of those. I don't. Yeah. I got nothing.
So I like that she force pushes the thing and just shatters it into a million little pieces.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would have been awesome if she did like the
Windu.
The shatter point deal where she just puts her hand up on it and then it just spiderwebs out and then just fucking explodes. Like that would have been cool as shit.
Oh, but yeah, she still just force pushes it to a shattering point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a good lightsaber battle, and as you said, Ahsoka escapes out of there.
Mm-hmm.
This is when we cut back to Anakin, right?
Yep.
And he goes to interrogate Poggle by himself.
Yes, he does. He does not. He does not try. In the words of Yoda.
Right. So he straight up does, and it's a fun little scene because we have the translator droid in there, translating everything at like that one sentence delay, and the droid is just awkwardly complicit as Anakin
is whooping ass.
Right, he full blown goes into torture mode.
Mm-hmm.
So first he does a full smackdown of Poggle physically, and then starts force choking him.
Yeah, because he walks in and he's like, "You're going to tell me what's going on," and then Poggle's like, and the droid yeah, the droid like, says, "The Jedi mind trick doesn't work on Geonosins. The other Jedi already figured that out." And Anakin basically has a chin rub moment, and he's like, "It doesn't work, right? You're right, it doesn't work." And then he decides to basically just whoop his ass.
Yeah. Like, he gives him like a strong backhand to start or something like that, right?
We do get like the Vader music cue here.
Yes, yeah.
So,
which we get as he even walks into the cell, which I found interesting. I feel like that.
Like, hey, here's a giveaway.
Well, yeah. I wish they would have saved it for the Force joke. As soon as they dealt their cards too soon on that one.
I do not disagree with you.
Yeah. So, it's glad that they made the reference, but yeah, just again, bad sound editing, just bad music editing. But from this, go ahead.
I was gonna say it affects the pacing of what's going on.
Yeah.
By far.
Oh yeah. I think they just need to fill in that little time. They have the shot of him walking in. It could have just been more generic music to lead into it. Then when Anakin starts, at least with like that first backhand, right? But yeah, just by starting it right off the bat, just like, come on, guys.
Yeah. So we cut back to Ahsoka. Yep. She's still on the run. Fighting continues. My next note is that Barriss could never remember that whole go up option instead of left or right. I chuckled to myself when I wrote this because I was like, this is so funny. Like, she memorized 200 different junctions, but she didn't realize that one of them was up instead of left or right. And,
which I don't understand still, because that's the junction she would have memorized. The junction goes up. Why is she not fucking remember that? Like,
I don't know. It's like directional. I mean, Ahsoka's here and she goes up, and Barriss just walks by and she's like, "Oh well, couldn't possibly anywhere other than left or right."
Yeah. What I don't even get is, why does she even stop at that point? Right? Like, she should have just
Kept on going. She shouldn't have slowed down.
Right. She slows down for a second to be like, where did Ahsoka go? But she's in a hallway that only, with disregarding that a vent shaft is there, goes one way, you know?
Yeah.
It's like in a hard day's night, like when the Beatles are fucking hiding behind the magazines, it's not like the horde of fans like paused for a second. No, they kept fucking running because they thought the Beatles were still running down the street, you know?
That's mob mentality, though. I mean, when there's only one, and the one is force sensitive, she felt a decision in the force was made here, and
I guess is that a rule that exists?
It does now. I have made it so.
Okay.
But she couldn't. She can only feel we'll call it a speed bump in the force,
right?
And so she slowed down, but didn't know which way to go, and she chose poorly. So
clearly. So what do we cut back to Anakin right away, right?
Yeah, and he's filling in Obi-Wan and the rest of the crew on the info that he got PTL.
He knows how to stop the worms.
The Jedi are very interested. It's basically Luminara and Ki-Adi-Mundi are interested in how he got any information out of PTL. And I think even Obi-Wan was like, wait, like you went and interrogated him? I guess they're going to do it together.
Right.
And Anakin's like, yeah, there's no time for protocol, essentially. I had to go in there and I had to do it. So they don't know the ins and outs. I think that Obi-Wan is probably pretty sure what happened in there.
Especially after because they've all tried.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
So they're filled in. Anakin then comms over to Ahsoka and basically tells her, make it cold. Barriss is still stalking Ahsoka. Ahsoka sabotages the cooling system so that it will just pump cold air into all, I guess, rooms and chambers or whatever.
Just every part of the ship. Essentially. Yeah. So freezing air is flying into the ship everywhere. And the ship comes out of hyperspace. Mm-hmm. And Kit Fisto spots the ship and then starts yelling out commands and, like, hey, the ship's infected. We'll
slow it down, stop it, isolate it, quarantine it, and then we'll go from there.
Right. Yep. So then Ahsoka gets up to the bridge to try and slow down the ship. And then Barriss catches up to Ahsoka again and finds her in the bridge, and they have a little fight in there. Mm-hmm. But then Barriss's brain worm does get weakened by the cold that's in there, and then Barriss starts freaking out. Yep. Apparently. This is also when Barriss kind of goes down to her knees and then does tell Ahsoka to kill her.
Yeah, she's like in the fetal position on the floor, and she's like, kill me, please.
Right. And Ahsoka cannot do it. She does not at all.
Yeah, I guess that Barriss gets over it for a little bit because she does start to fight back again, and then there's some more cold blasts of air, and Ahsoka shoots her in the face with some tube hanging from the ceiling. This gets the worm to start to retract from Barriss's brain, and what you see is Ahsoka backhanded grip on the lightsaber, like concerned look on her face, and then she just goes for it, and you see her take that killing stroke, but you don't know what that killing stroke is.
Yeah. Barriss is off screen at this point, so she basically slashes towards camera, and we get a wipe back to, is it Kit Fisto? Mm-hmm. right?
Mm-hmm.
So we see the ship docking with the station that Fisto is on, and then Fisto boards on to the ship with 2 troopers, and then we see Ahsoka and Barriss lying on the ground of the bridge.
Mm-hmm. They're kind of, I wouldn't say they're cuddling, but Ahsoka is holding Barriss in a protective embrace, I guess you would say.
Right. Barriss is definitely down and, head on Ahsoka's lap, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because it's so cold, we can definitely still see that both of them are breathing, so that we get some visible breath happening on both of them.
That's clever. I didn't not take note of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hey, animation department, well done.
Yeah, it was a nice touch to really immediately reveal what did happen, if you couldn't guess.
Right. Basically Ahsoka's not holding Barriss's lifeless body because she chose to
fully strike her down.
Right.
Yeah. So then they get taken to the med bay, and Ahsoka wakes up, freaks out.
Real quick. So before Ahsoka passes out or anything, she talks to Kit Fisto, and she's like, "Master, we're ready for the supplies to go drop them off." And Kit Fisto's like, "Oh, silly Padawan, no problem, we'll take care of that." So I kind of feel like this whole time, Kit Fisto could have just went and dropped the shit off, or sent a ship over there or something. Is it only now that there's this catastrophic problem and we got two Jedi Padawan that are down and a whole bunch of clones that are all fucked up? If he's running this med facility, you would think that his priority would be taking care of them, but he's like, nah, we got it. We'll take Mace's fucking Grubhub delivery. It'll be good.
Well, yeah, again, I think it's Kit just going why are you still worried about that? You almost had to kill your friend. Let
and yourself.
Other people, let other people worry about that shit. Let's get you to a fucking med bay.
It is also worth stating that we had some 2 tugboats. My dog's having a sneezing fit. How about that? We had basically 2 tugboats that were dispatched to slow this ship down.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also had coolant tubes or something that they hooked up to the ship to drop the temperature inside.
Yeah.
And it seems like there has been a little bit of pause from when it stopped / docked to when Kit Fisto is willing to
get on.
To get on.
Right.
Because he gets an update oh, it's sub-freezing inside.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, okay, should be good. Let's go. And, maybe this is the driving force behind Ahsoka eventually not just wearing a tube top.
God hope it.
Don't know.
I don't know.
When you get caught in sub-freezing weather in a sports bra, I would imagine that you would be pretty cold.
Yeah.
Surprised. Maybe that's what she was doing with Luminara, is just trying to keep herself warm.
She was using or Barriss.
Barriss, yeah, not Lumi.
She was using Barriss as a blanket.
Yep.
A human or a person blanket, I guess. Not a human blanket.
Yes. So now we cut to Ahsoka waking up, and it's a POV shot through her eyelids.
Anakin is there.
It's
hanging out.
Yep.
Anakin basically tells her that everything's fine. Barriss is fine. Barriss is lying in the bed right next to her.
Mm-hmm.
Troopers are fine as well. So the ship-wide freezing got rid of all the worms.
Yep, it's all thanks to Ahsoka and her quick maneuvers and perseverance, shall we say.
Right. Kit Fisto enters and then explains all of everything about the worm. They were able to capture some of these worms and take a look at what they do and how they work. And
so he also says,
mm-hmm.
Master Skywalker, these are the same parasitic worms that you found on Geonosis. So this
so the information got out there. See?
Right, but they didn't give it to the padawans. That's what I'm saying is weird.
I don't disagree. I just also, I don't know. It's just, yeah. They
Ahsoka basically takes that information and is like, whatever. Hey, Master Skywalker, can we talk privately?
Yeah.
So he nods. Kit Fisto gives his approval for some reason, smiles as Kit Fisto does, and leaves. And then Ahsoka is talking to Anakin essentially about the moral dilemma that she had with Barriss when Barriss was like, kill me, and she's like, I couldn't. Like, what did I do? What was right? Or did I put people in jeopardy? And Anakin says, essentially, Barriss is in this for the greater good, and she realized that what needed to happen is for the parasite to be killed, and if that meant that you had to take her out as well, then she would have considered her objective complete in saving other lives. And then he also says, but you didn't, and I bet she's pretty happy about that. So
right.
You're going to come across a lot of tough situations, and you have to do what you think is best, and it's not going to be easy. It's kind of the gist of it, right?
Basically, yeah.
So at that point, that's like his pep talk, and then he leaves. Then Ahsoka rolls over and is looking out the window, and it's like a good guy Star Destroyer, and you see a couple of shuttles kind of approaching it, and then we cue loud music. Like,
yeah,
it's an awkward ending to this episode.
I don't disagree. It's so weird. Again, I feel like they were just trying to fill in these last seconds to make time or something like that. But we could have just stayed on a shot of her, and I felt like that would have been better.
I think just so like, too. Or like Iris out when follow Anakin out the door.
Right. And I don't. I agree. I'm glad you brought that up, because I just found that close so awkward, and especially because she's looking out into space, that when they do the iris down, and it's just replacing space with more space. It's just like a slightly awkward jump cut almost is what it looks like.
Yeah. And that's weird because like Stuart Lee is the guy that directed this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in the past 6 episodes, he's directed 4 of them. So we've seen his work before, and what I'm trying to say is this is not typical of, what we saw last week. He directed that one, and we had 2/3 of the same writing staff. And then 3 weeks ago, we had 2/3 of the same writing staff, and it was also directed by Stuart Lee. So, you would think if this is like a stylistic thing or a writing thing, that it would be common for us to be bringing these things up, but that's not the case.
Like I said, it's probably just like an awkward fill for time, and they were just trying to make these quick decisions on how to fill these last like 5-6 seconds.
And I don't understand that, because I don't understand like how long episodes need to be, because they're definitely not like a standard like 22 minutes and 30 seconds every single episode. They vacillate 10, 15 seconds. So this is 7 seconds shorter than last week's, but 13 seconds longer than next week's. So it's not necessary to have that fill.
Like I said, there's probably there's something to that degree, because fairly typical of other shows. It really yeah, you come down to about 15 seconds exactly. Especially on a channel like Cartoon Network, where other channels, NBC and stuff, you might be able to give those few seconds to your local news broadcast team to fill that in, right? But yeah, same thing. It's just one of those things where they might have decided, hey, just sticking on her face for 7 whole seconds is a little too long. Mm-hmm. But then trying to add in this pan across from her face to window in that time also it's too short for that. It's too long to stay on one shot. It's too short to switch shots. Mm-hmm. Right? So they're trying to split the difference.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just those like decisions that are happening when they're trying to make shows that are released every week, right? Mm-hmm. That's the one thing I can think of that's happening here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree.
Yeah, it's either way. End result is that it's awkward as fucking hell.
Yeah, this episode kind of in general has an awkward overtone to it, which is weird.
Yeah.
But let's jump into thumbs up, thumbs down, because I think both of us are going to have a bit to say about this this week.
Right.
I'll go first. I'll go first. Mm-hmm. I gave this one a thumbs up. Okay. There was a bunch of shit that obviously that I'm like, why the fuck did this happen? Why was this story choice made? You know, who's in charge of this war to take all the fucking generals and put them together and send two noobs off on their own? Mm-hmm. That being said, I think this is a great roundup to at least the last episode. I'm not sure that it works fully as like a 5-parter. Maybe we'll get to that after like thumbs up, thumbs down. But for my strict judgment on this episode, I give it a thumbs up. There's some weird shit that happens, but overall, it's a cool idea. Like, you know, you got these worms that are attacking, and it's kind of like Jason X,
right?
Where you're on a spaceship with a big baddie that is taking over, and a particular character needs to fight their way out of that situation. Mm-hmm. And as things progress, there are more things that they have to fight against via nature of the enemy, I guess we'll call it.
Okay. I'm giving this one a thumbs down.
Not surprised.
Yeah, it's similar to my objections to last week's episode. Only this time, in light of last week's episodes, I have more overarching problems with this one because the rules of the worm as set up by last week, you know, we didn't get a lot about how the worms worked, but we understood what controlled the worms, and then that is gone this episode. Therefore, it raised a shit ton more questions for me.
So you're talking about the queen.
Right. So then, like, who is controlling Scythe and the other clones, or why do they have this, like, fresh directive based on just these worms, right? Like, why do the worms have the ability to give clones new feelings, directives, orders, right? And then if their mind is being taken over in that manner, are they not undead? Mm-hmm. Like last time we only saw it happening with the undead. But then...
Well, no, not necessarily, because it would have happened to Luminara and she was not dead yet.
Right. So but that's what I'm saying. Like, so based on the rules from last time, we generally saw it happen with the undead, but there was still one overarching power handling it. So then here it's like, why does Scythe and all the other clones still have their own mental, like, how they know who Ahsoka and Luminar are still. Not that they're just generic Jedi. They know them specifically. So the history of whoever the clones are is still there, right?
Okay.
It's just...
Go ahead. Sorry, I was cutting you off.
It's just a weird... Like, the inspiration point for this episode is clearly Body Snatchers and all of its forms and incarnations, right? But at least, again, with Body Snatchers, there's specific rules that get set up, and they follow those rules. But in this one, they're just kind of, like I was talking about last week, making it up as they go. And things contradict each other. And as we have seen with a lot of these episodes that are inspired by, they take the main idea, but they don't. Like Zilla Beast definitely was the best that has come out of these, because that's a very straightforward reference point.
And when you say that has come out of these, you're talking about like the monster movie inspired storyline.
Not even like monster movie, just inspired, like, so even like that Seven Samurai, the Bounty Hunters one, right?
I guess.
So including Bounty Hunters, so like any really clear pop culture reference outside of the Star Wars universe, right? So, and like there might be little things here and there that are obviously inspired. Like Cad Bane is clearly like Western inspired, but he's not inspired by one specific movie per se, right?
Right.
Or his story isn't drawn from one specific thing.
Yeah, he's not talking to Anakin and like, go ahead, punk, make my day.
Right. Yeah. Or like he's not silent like Clint Eastwood throughout the good the Spaghetti West Fistful of Dollar trilogy. Right. But so I'm talking about when they take one specific thing and try and build a whole episode around it, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So like Body Snatchers is very specific, and of course they're not going to try and make any sort of political commentary with it, but then they still just kind of do nothing with it to me, right? But yeah, like I said, my main issue is that I just have so many questions about how do the worms work, why they work in this manner, and
so is it possible that the Queen Karina is not dead?
I don't know, because that still only causes more issues for me. Like how does this hive mind work? Like how far reaching can she actually go?
I would say, right, because like this is happening in hyperspace, I would say there is a possibility that she is not dead.
I don't disagree with that based on what we saw from last week.
Right. I think that would kick off the beginning of this episode with Scythe being taken over. Other than that, I'm not really sure where her motivations would lie in attacking people that are leaving and going somewhere else. Now, I get the behavior of Scythe, like collecting the eggs and then distributing the eggs. That is what parasites do. Like, parasites are there to propagate their own survival and the survival of their species. So that makes sense.
So you think it's just the worms acting on their own interest then? Because that would actually make more sense to me. I didn't think of it that way for some reason. Only, again, because of everything set up by last episode, that just set me up in a way looking for stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a yes and a no. Like, that is a yes. But then, like, overall, when... like, how would the worms know the information that, like, they're going to a medical facility? Because ideally what happens is that the ship goes there, lands, and the eggs make it inside the facility, and then there's like hundreds and hundreds of potential host, right?
Yeah.
I think we knew that we found out that in the past that the medical facility holds like 10,000 people or some shit like that, right? Mm-hmm. So even if it's at half capacity, because they do have supplies that they're willing to depart with, so we'll say half capacity. That's like another 5,000. But then also, the first brain invaded clone goes in and kills the fucking pilots and then just abandons the cockpit. So if it wasn't for the 2 tugboat tractor beam ships, the main medical frigate would have just smashed into the medical base and then therefore eliminating your potential 5,000 new hosts, right? So
also, why were the pilots killed and not turned into more hosts?
Because they had their helmets on.
I guess.
Yeah. I think that's what it is. They had their helmets on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
carry on.
So that is why they weren't taken in as hosts after the fact, because they were killed. Now,
why weren't they?
Because
undead?
Queen Karina can use these naturally occurring worm parasites. She can control them to reanimate the dead. However, she is not around, so the worms had no business crawling up the noses of these 2 dead troopers because they were already dead. And she wasn't there to use their ability to reanimate those 2 and turn them into zombie troopers. That's why.
I mean, I guess. It's just... this episode just makes so many leaps to me that... Again, it's the 1-2 punch of last week's episode and this episode that just make me upset having to remember that this happens in canon.
Okay.
And
I mean, fair enough on that.
Right. It's just like a story that in this universe is a little too out there. Like it undoes any like verisimilitude I would have had in this universe with everything else. You know, there's just something about these 2 episodes together that my mind can't reconcile as a thing, you know.
Okay.
And again, this is like any Invasion of the Body Snatchers adaptation, like that is fine because of how that story operates and the rule set up, and also like what the various versions are trying to tell, right? Like again, so like the 50s movie is a whole not at all unobvious parable trying to warn you about communism and the bad things about communism, and these aliens are gonna get you, you know.
Okay.
And then in the 90s it gets turned into like a really interesting AIDS epidemic story.
I think you mean gay cancer.
Yes, all of that, right? So these aliens are taking over the gays and they're killing people off via not AIDS but alien stuff. And then the newest one was just a trash movie with Daniel Craig and Nicole Kidman, which I feel really bad about because they're both great actors. It just was a awful movie.
I think the 90s ones would have been, instead of AIDS killing them off, it would have been like the Invades.
Oh, God.
You like that one? No? All right. I've got one
so
other
bad.
question
Anyways.
for you before
Go ahead.
We can have our final thoughts
yes.
whatnot. But so this is part 5 of a 5-part story, starting with Senate Spy. continuing with Landing at Point Rain, onto Weapons Factory, then last week Legacy of Terror, and this week Brain Invaders. How do you feel? Like, does this make a 5-part story? Is this a little bit forced? Is this a good conclusion? Like
I was saying in the second episode, we were kind of saving this discussion for now.
Mm-hmm.
Under normal show circumstances, I don't think this would be considered a 5-episode arc. It would just be considered the show,
Right. I totally agree with you. Like, looking forward to Star Wars Rebels, that show was designed as episode 1 happens first, and then the next episode happens after that, and then the next episode happens after that. So, although even within that series, there are still anthology-type stories that fit into the season.
Yeah.
For the most part, it is some shows that happen in a row, and it's a season of a series. It's not a 5-episode arc because all of them take place on fucking Lothal. Right? And that's the connective tissue here is Geonosis, and that's it. Right.
And I mean, that's just how any TV show would work generally, where it's like you have the arc of the episode, right? The episode itself has to have a beginning, middle, and end. Episode following can use that episode as a launching pad, or but it still needs its own arc. Or it can still be its own standalone episode, but then somehow each episode just kind of adds to a bigger arc, right? Like, they don't all have to be on Lothal,
Right.
So they can build, and every show has its own style, right? So think about X-Files having the Monster of the Week episodes versus the anthology episodes, right? But even the anthology episodes still build the characters of Scully and Mulder,
Right, there's still a relationship growing there.
Right. And those anthology episodes are still canon. They just don't build upon the greater story of, like, what happened to Mulder's sister and is the truth out there, right?
Right. But what's the dude, the cigarette smoking man?
The smoking man. Right. Yeah. So, and what the smoking man has to do with all of this. So, like, again, it's that mixed bag where, like, that is possible, but they don't. It's not like they look at the anthology episodes and then call them like a 2-episode arc. Like, those are just the anthology episodes. Yeah, like,
I totally agree. So it's I don't know. Somebody decided this was a thing.
Well, like, because the 5-episode arc thing I've only seen on Wikipedia. Was there anything on Cartoon Network itself or official descriptions off of?
I couldn't tell you because that was a decade ago. I mean,
like, is there anything on the DVD special features that calls it out as a 5-episode arc at all?
So this is in season 2, and season 2 doesn't have the same special features that season 1 had.
Interesting. Yeah. So like I said, the 5-part storyline is coming off of Wikipedia, so I'm curious to know if this was billed.
I think it also comes off of, like, IMDb, which may be I don't know, is that
careful with that, because that's going to be a lot of that's fan submitted stuff, generally speaking,
Right, so it's about the same level of authentication proven.
Sort of. I would, like, Wikipedia, there are a lot of checks and balances there that IMDb does not have, right? IMDb, like, you need an official account, and then you can set up your own stuff if you want to. Then you can put in, like, the official descriptions and official credits and all that stuff, right? But when it comes to, like, synopses or whatever.
Synopses.
synopses. People can submit them, and I think there's even a page where you can go look at all the ones that have been submitted, right?
Probably.
And then I think it's like the one that gets like upvoted the most or whatever gets put up front, unless there's like the studios or whatever paid for like an official one to be put in there or something like that. IMDb is kind of it's a strange little creature. That's why I like IMDb trivia as much as I devour that stuff. You do have to still be careful with that.
Take it with a grain of salt.
Right, or just find a backed source somewhere else. I trust Wikipedia because there's a lot of checks and balances there, right?
Yeah, definitely now. I mean, 10 years ago, no.
Right.
But 2018, yeah.
Yeah, like Wiki is a source, and I'm glad I'm not I'm aged out of going to any sort of schooling anymore. But if I was a professor, Wikipedia is in fact a source.
Well, here's the thing for any students out there. Mm-hmm. Go to fucking Wikipedia and then scroll down to the bottom that says like
all the sources are there.
And boom, then use those sources to back up the information that you found on Wikipedia, and you're fucking golden. You just can't use Wikipedia itself as your source.
Right.
But utilize it for the information that it has and the sources that tell you where the information came from.
Right.
Your research is done.
Right. So I just still find it interesting because it's interesting to me that people will take encyclopedias at face value, but
not online encyclopedias.
But then what's funny is then you're still at the behest of whoever is doing the research for the encyclopedia, which but the difference, and the difference, Lorenzo, the difference is that you can't edit an encyclopedia. You could edit Wikipedia. Do you know that information in the encyclopedia is good to begin with? That's my question.
No, but the assumption is that an encyclopedia has been compiled by a series of professionals that is then also edited and potentially fact-checked by a series of professionals, as opposed to a public source thing that is able to be edited
but is still fact-checked on the spot.
But is able to be edited by the general populace. That is the difference.
Yeah, but it's still, again, everything is checked a lot more. And the one study that I did see, this is years ago, I'm sure plenty more have been done, but somebody did do the research of going through an encyclopedia, fact-checking everything in an encyclopedia, and it did have a worse accuracy rate than actual Wikipedia, because there wasn't, because like the thing with Wiki is that yes, every now and then you'll have a I don't know what else to call it, but like a Wiki terrorist that goes in and like fuck shit up, right? But it usually is within the hour that there is a like dedicated Wiki team of people,
because it's continually being monitored. As opposed to something that was printed and, like, maybe the next year before there's an update or a retraction or whatever. Right?
So
I get what you're saying, but it's also the perception, especially coming from the beginnings of Wikipedia. It was an open access thing that was available to whomever had internet access and the ability to create an account with them. So at that point, it wasn't as heavily monitored and or scrutinized. Like falsities were more able to exist longer and be presented as fact. Has this corrected itself? For the majority, yes. 100%, no. But that from an academic standpoint, that's why you can't use it as a source.
I still just have issues with that just because of the time and place we're in now. You know what I mean?
But
I know what you mean, but yeah.
That there's a progression of what should be accepted as reliable resources, but that I'm just saying that's why it is the way it is.
Right.
So
yeah.
let's move past that. You got anything else to say about this episode or the last 4 episodes before this, or I don't know, the next?
This one for sure. I still have
to come.
I still have questions about the technical issues with this episode.
Okay.
This if it weren't for the few weird technical hiccups, I would have found myself like I don't hate this episode. I just have fundamental issues with it. But this one in particular versus Legacy of Terror especially, between the weird audio edits and that weird fucking awkward longing look outside the window at the end before the iris out and the loud music.
That was bizarre.
It's just fucking weird. Because otherwise I did note, like, you know, the fight scenes were pretty cool. That flip over the table was pretty smooth. There's animation details here that I really enjoyed. The breath work in the freezing temperatures. And we have come a long way from me complaining about how wooden and still Ahsoka's face is in particular to her just being better, right? You know, it's again, we're still working with like these TV budgets, but I think the animation has really caught up to a place that it should have always been at before they embarked on a show like this.
Yeah.
You know? But
I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So, but as a close to this supposed 5-episode arc, I think, you know, I think it's been
works,
it
works well enough. How do you say this? If this is truly a 5-episode arc, those 5 episodes work together with the same cohesion that this completes them.
I agree to that extent where I like that the 5 episodes were completely different, especially like I feel like it's been a lifetime since we saw Padme, even though that was the beginning of this this story arc, you know. But I like that each episode had their own style, their own flavor, you know. The closest two that would have matched each other would have been, you know, like Weapons Factory and Landing at Point Rain, I would say, right?
For sure.
You know, those would be the two that were most similar to one another, but otherwise there was kind of a genre shift with most episodes here. You know?
I agree. 100%. Right there with you.
Yeah, and I really like it. I think the show is best when it's kind of on a roll like this, you know. You know, like the standalone episodes are fine. Just they just up to this point haven't been neat all the time per se. So, but I think the show is finally at this point. You know, what are we, like a third through season 2, right?
Yeah. Yep, just under halfway through season 2.
Right. Yeah. So, like, the writing is getting stronger for sure. It's not making just weird, idiotic jumps in logic. There's still conveniences that are happening, right? That you and I have discussed. But yeah.
Well, that's our job to do.
Right.
So. Let's wrap this one up.
Sure.
Plugs for the week, per usual. Twitter at Not the Nerds. That's me, Kevin. Facebook at Not the Nerds Podcast. That's Lorenzo. You can find us on pretty much any podcatcher of your choice. We're available on YouTube as well. You can search either the episode title or These Aren't the Nerds You're Looking For and find us on YouTube that way. If you do happen to be on YouTube, hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification button, and let us know that you're out there. That'd be awesome. Music at the beginning and end of each episode is provided by Lindsay. You can contact her via email, strangefantasymusic@gmail.com. And then, as usual, our illustrator is Kevin Warren. You can find him on Twitter at TheyCallMeKdub. You got anything else, Lorenzo?
Our own email is notthenerdspodcast@gmail.com. I don't think you mentioned that one.
I did not.
Yep. So that's everything, I think, for this week.
That's everything for this week. Next week, we've got Grievous Intrigue. And until then, these aren't the nerds you're looking for.
Bye-bye.